Nobody wants to be alone.
There are a lot of people in this room who know Hector much better than I do, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know him a little bit over this past month. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, in case there's people here who are hearing about him and his life story for the first time. And then we're going to try to get right to it. A little less from me on Chris and a lot more from Hector. At age 21, Hector Boyer Rodriguez was incarcerated for felony murder and drug possession. And he served 27 years
In 2 months.
and 2 months before being released in February of 2023. While in prison, Hector found solace and purpose through the BARD Prison Initiative and Rehabilitation Through the Arts. Raise your hand if you're involved with Rehabilitation Through the Arts. Yes, RTA, some of you are familiar. BARD Prison Initiative, some of you are familiar, yes. Every time I come up with like, hey, I heard about the street prison program board, he's like, yeah. He's been involved in a lot of amazing programs. In that time, while he was inside, he embraced, especially in the early years with the BARD and RTA, embraced rigorous course material and learned the power of critical thinking, writing, performance, and visual art to process his trauma. His artwork reflects a deep yearning to explore and connect with childhood memories and to process incarceration, channeling his experiences into vibrant expressions of memories and survival. Today, he continues to develop his art. He's currently a student at SUNY Purchase. Hear about. And is on a path to earning his master's in fine arts.
Nice.
And as you know from just hanging here for the short time you've been here, he continues to advocate for educational and creative programs in prison, believing, it's not even believing, knowing that those programs can transform lives. On a slightly different scale, he was recently interviewed by our local weekly newspaper here in Dobbs, Ferry, known as the Rivertown's Dispatch. And he said something that I found very touching. You could walk by a pallet of wood and think nothing of it. Many of us do that on the reg, on our walks every day. But if I add color and meaning to it, then you're going to give it another look. And, said Hector Rodriguez, I feel like that's what people did for me. They gave me color and they gave me meaning. So, there's a lot. We're the Donald Gallery. Our first mission is always beauty, and by that I don't mean pretty. And so I'm used to talking about art in a lot of different ways, but this exhibit and today is very much about learning more about incarceration and the prison industrial complex. And so I wanted to start with how I first come to this, which is with a lot of statistics and things that you might not know. So I'm just going to run through a few things. Many of you will not be surprised by this. The U.S. prison population has grown nearly 500% in the past 50 years. Mass incarceration remains a defining feature of the American criminal legal system. The United States ranks among the highest worldwide in its dependence on incarceration. Let's just think about a world where there is a dependence on incarceration. What began as a response to rising crime and the expansion of punitive drug policies evolved into a complex network of prisons, jails, probation, parole, and that system now supervises almost 6 million people in this country. This system of control is vast, unevenly applied, and deeply consequential, with far-reaching social, economic, and political effects. People of color are acutely impacted. Nearly 2 million people, disproportionately Black, are living in prisons and jails instead of their communities. I have a lot of statistics here. I could read them all to you. I have an incredible graph that shows that not only is the United States the highest country for incarceration rates per 100,000 people, but if you break down the United States state by state, many states have higher incarceration rates than most countries, right? So just, if you're that math brain person, just think of it that way. I also want to just make a point, since I'm not a native New Yorker, that even progressive states, because a lot of times I think in New York we go, yeah, Louisiana, ooh, or yeah, Alabama, ooh. Even progressive states like New York and Massachusetts appear as extreme as Louisiana and Mississippi in their use of prisons and jails. So those are the facts. I've been learning and reading and thinking about this a lot lately, thanks to your inspiration and my looking and thinking about your art. But the facts are cold and dry. And for you, and for many people in this room who have served sentences, who've been inside, and for many of you who have worked inside and worked hard to bring this terrible situation to the attention of many, this is not something that's cold and dry. This is personal. And I think that's what I find really amazing about your work. And I want to thank you for sharing this really intense personal story that you are working with, that many people would not be ready to share or willing to share, and you always are. And that's a gift that you give to us. So, why don't we start with the cell and the soundtrack and the piece on the wall in there, which you told me the title of, and my name right here and right out the other, so say it again.
Yes.
And you talk.
So first of all, thank you everyone for showing up here and supporting me and people who look like me. And before I even get to anything, I want everyone to understand that I am not an exception. There's nothing special about me at all. There's many people like me. There's doing greater things than me. They could do way better and greater things than me and engage you all in many different ways, unique to them. If you all look their way, like you have looked my way, right? So it's very important that we understand that, because in a lot of places I go, people think that I am special or that I am unique or that I am rare. It's nothing unique about me. I am who I am, and in that way I am unique, but other than that, I'm just someone that needed the right warmth from mankind, from our community, and sadly, growing up, I just had the wrong acknowledgement. And we all know that as kids, you know, if you applaud them doing bad things, they're gonna continue doing negative things. If you applaud them doing great things, they're gonna go on and do great things. Sadly, for most of my youth, I was applauded for the negative things, right? But with that said, the cell and the soundscape is something that came to my mind when I was taking a class in prison about sound and gender. And the professor brought sounds from Egypt during the Gaddafi time. And when I was listening to the sound and reading an article, I remember that she played the sound of skateboards, and she asked us, when you hear skateboards, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And I was like, young boys running around. But when we saw the videos, it was young girls, right? So we tend to attach an image to certain sounds because we're conditioned to certain things, right? And so when I was introduced to that and it forced me to think critically about that, I said, well, every day that I'm in prison, I have to hear these sounds, right? I was locking at the end of one company where the gate slams. So that slamming sound that you guys heard, for a long period of time, I had to hear that every half an hour, right? When you hear the sounds of the music competing with each other, it's because in prison, we all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we'll compete for sound and space. So I may be playing Spanish music here, somebody is going to play Jamaican music, somebody else going to play something else, because we're constantly competing for space, right? So that's why that piece is so important to me. And it's only 6 minutes and 2 seconds long, and I know that it makes people uncomfortable for that short moment of time. Then why you guys send me away for 28 years, right? Now, there's a question that could come after that. You killed somebody, right? And at no point during any of my talk do I say that I should not be held accountable. I committed a crime. I should be held accountable. But my problem is not with that. My problem is that when I got arrested in 1995, I had just turned 21 and I was facing the death penalty. The Nassau County didn't pursue the death penalty, so they decided to go with life without parole. Because of the heavens, the universe, or the higher power, the jury found me guilty of a lesser charge, and they gave me 28 years to life. Out of 28 years to life, I did 27 years and 2 months and came home. But during that time in prison, I already knew that that was it for me. I wanted nothing to do with the life of crime, right? So I knew that I needed to take programs, and I took every program that was available to me that I felt would help me become a better father, a better writer. My writing was horrible. I had a girlfriend at the time that used to return all my letters with corrections on it, right? So
That's love.
yeah, that's a tough love as well, because she was helping me become better, but at the time I had to face my reality that my tenses was horrible, right? But it's a reality, right? And even her, in her own way, she was looking to help me better myself, right? And so with this piece here, I try to get it as close as possible to what my actual cell looked like. I had to learn carpentry real fast because I'm taking an installation class at SUNY Purchase, and this is the project that came out of that class. And I don't know carpentry, so there's a lot of bends and twisted and stuff like that, but I knew that I wanted to render this piece because I know that we don't focus enough on how sounds affect the body. And, you know, sound is not only affecting the psyche, but it's also affecting your physical body, and it's something that you carry with you. And a lot of times we tend to tune things out because we're looking to survive, but it's still there, it's still playing there. So the piece next to it, which I titled "The Threads That Binds Us All," is the blue shirt is the blue that the correctional officers wear with the blue pants. And the green is the state green that we wear as prisoners upstate, and the orange is the orange jumpsuit that we wear in Nassau County, right? Every county is different, but for the most part, it's orange. And so what I wanted to do with this piece was I wanted to show people that when we wear uniforms, we adapt a personality and identity, and these identity create hierarchy, and these identity are hurting us, right? And so what I did was I went to the SUNY Purchase campus, and I learned that these wild grapevines grow along the side of trees and choke them and drag the trees down. And we consider these vines to be invasive, and we want to cut them out, and we want to do without them. But what I tell people is these vines and me, we have something very in common, right? These vines were going all the way to the top for light. That's all they're looking for. They're looking for light because they want to survive. I wanted to survive my childhood, and I did it the best way that I knew how to, which was selling drugs, right? In the household that I grew up with my cousin, we were selling drugs since the age of 7. I was 7, he was about 6, right? And so I never became addicted to drugs, but I became addicted to violence. He became addicted to drugs, and he wasn't violent. So I tell people, we never know what's going to attract a child's mind. and what's going to call their attention, right? And so he died during the COVID epidemic at a rehab because he had a life struggle with drugs. I ended up in prison, as you guys know, right? And so it's knowing that these conditions existed. And so for me, because people celebrate me and I like to be celebrated and I like to be invited to places and I like to have these conversations, but I also want people to understand where I came from. So when I go to spaces, I let people know I am a formerly incarcerated person, right? And it's not because I'm proud of it, I'm ashamed of it, but I want society to know that who you see today doing these things that you guys consider to be so great was somebody that at one time you wanted to give the death penalty to, right? And you would have been happy to know this guy killed somebody, send them away, kill them, do that, right? But what happened when people decided to volunteer and go inside prison and give me a second look, right? So those vines, I chose to give them a second look. In the piece in the gallery where there's birds and they're colorful, that piece is made out of a crate that was thrown out by SUNY Purchase. I took it apart. The drawing board, when I was doing the fellowship at Yale, they was going to throw it out because Yale's super rich and they could afford to throw things out. So they gave it to me, right? So I repurposed these things, right? But now it's a piece of art that then end up in the garbage, right? And so that's my message. My message is me and that piece of art have something in common, right? You guys gave me colors. You guys gave me the ability to talk in public out here, right? I learned this in prison. I learned this in RTA. I learned this in workshops, right? Because people who want to volunteer go in there and look at me and gave me that opportunity so that I could be out here and share this with you guys. So that's those two pieces, and that's like a long-winded answer to describing those two pieces. But that's basically what I stand for as an artist. I want to create conversations around topic that is complicated. I feel that we should never shy away from a conversation, even if it's a MAGA conversation, right? Because if we shy away from that conversation, then when we have people like the one we have now in power, they become loud. But if we never exclude it and we engage in a conversation, then that flow could keep going back and forth. And that's what I like to do with my art. There's pieces that I like to use pointillism, surrealism, and realism all in one piece. And I do that because if you know a little bit about art, you're gonna say, well, there's pointillism here, and this bird looked real well. This bird looked kind of abstract or surrealist. It's different art style, all in conversation, right? And that's who I am. I love conversation. The more complex the conversation, the better it is for me because it allowed this. And so that's it. Thank you.
There's some work in the first room in there. I want to talk to you to tell us a little bit about that video, but why don't you tell us a little bit about that work that's in there, which I think is from the beginning when you were inside and some of the stuff you started with, where you started thinking, I can create, I can make things.
Yeah. Well, before I got to that work, I tell people my first introduction to art was journalism, journaling, and I didn't know it. I was very angry. I had 4 people testifying against me. My thought towards them was very negative. So I would write down all my intention towards these people, and I would flush the toilets I'll flush the letters down the toilet, right? But there were times that I fall asleep and wake up and reread what I wrote. And I noticed that I was dark, I was full of hate, and I said, I need a change. I can't carry this with me. And that led me towards the path of changing. So then I started tracing cartoon characters, right? Like Mickey Mouse, Tweety Birds, and stuff like that. So when I went upstate, I try to render portraits because I feel that a real artist is someone who could just render portraits, and I couldn't render a portrait for anything. So I said, man, that's not me. I started doing leather work. And someone in prison had all the patience in the world to show me how to use the tool. And then I excel in that because, again, somebody decided to look my way and have patience with me and show me how to use the tools, right? So I created a lot leather work, woodwork, ceramics, all those things. Those sculptures that you see in that room, they're it's interesting because I love avocado, and when I get a package from home, I would say the avocado pit, because when it dries hard. And so when I was creating the sculptures, I would use the pit to create like the body structure, and I would paper mache all around it, right? But the two that are kind of raw that you see twigs on, I was in Fishkill Correctional Facility, and I was walking the yard, and that's the first yard that I saw a tree. And I couldn't believe it, because most of the time I was in Green Haven, it's more industrial, there's no trees in the yard. And I'm seeing these walnuts, like the dry walnuts, I'm picking them up, I'm putting them in my pocket, I'm cleaning them up, and I'm like, damn, they look like African masks. I'm gonna clean them, I'm gonna glue them. I used the floor wax to like seal them. But then we had a raid in our dorm, and one of the officers come to me and said, "Is that voodoo?" And I said, "Yes." And so he destroyed Farhan, who's the guy over there with the prints. He was my roommate in that situation. He destroyed Farhan's side of the cell, but left my cell alone, because I told him that these pieces were voodoo and they were there to protect me. But I just knew that if he was gonna be ignorant, then I was just gonna use his ignorance in my favor, right? So that one time, my cell didn't get destroyed. So I named them the Voodoo Dolls because of that particular officer. And, you know, so, but there's also a video in that room, right? And that guy's name is Aladdin. He's in my cohort at bar. We started bar together. And like me, Aladdin, during the beginning time of his education, he struggled with tenses and verbs and all these things. But today, Aladdin is graduating with a master's degree from bar, right? And so, yeah. You know, he has a family that's supporting him, and, you know, he's applying for clemency, which is almost difficult to get in New York State. But he's someone that's there eating up education. Why? Because there's people who are going into those places and is believing in Aladdin. So again, I am not an exception. There's many people like me in Aladdin, right? There's many people out here in positions that you guys wouldn't probably understand they are formerly incarcerated. But all it takes is for believing in another human being, right? And knowing that their worst, poor decision-making doesn't define them, right? It is part of them, but it doesn't define them. Yeah.
So you've talked to me a little bit. This may be a stretch. You don't like this question, you talk about something else. But you have those beautiful paintings across the way that are very much about feminine energy and feminine power. And you say to us, ecofeminism, right? And you said that the culture and the practice of patriarchy and toxic masculinity is poison. Can you talk a little about the connection in that and how you made that connection for yourself, and where, I mean, it could for many people maybe seem like a big disconnect, but I think you see it as a path, right?
Yeah, it's all connected to me. So at the beginning of my bid, when I was facing the death penalty, I felt I needed to find my mother, right? And it took me some digging, but I found my mother. And throughout a course of many years, I started learning little things about my mother, right? For example, I was her third child by the age of 19, right? My mother was 19 when she had me. My father was like 50, going on 51, right? I'm the only child between them two. I know that my mother's nickname is Milagro, which means miracle. And I found out that her mother died giving birth to my mother, right? So I'm learning all these things. I'm like, okay, I do remember like it was yesterday when my grandfather told her you could leave to the United States, but you're not taking him, right? So now when I'm in school and I'm learning about patriarchal ideologies and values and feminism, right? I'm like, my mother was a feminist without knowing she was a feminist. The moment she decided to say, you know what, then you keep him, but I'm leaving, right? It's a hard pill to swallow, right? No kid want to be left behind. I didn't want to be left behind, right? But I also had uncles whispering in my ears, your mother's a bad mother. A good mother don't leave her child. What mother would leave her child? So they was poisoning my ears from the very beginning, so I hated my mother, right? Until I found myself in this situation that now I felt the state wanted to take my life. And for whatever reason, I just needed to hear from my mother, right? And she told me her side of the story, right? And then I just started piecing it together. I started piecing it together with books I was reading in school. One of the books that changed my life is about Mary Wollstonecraft, which is Vindication of the Rights of a Woman, when she's basically saying, I'm not physically stronger than you because nature didn't make me physically stronger than you. But if you educate women, let's compete with our brain. So when I read that, it made all the sense in the world to me, right? And I was like, that makes sense. So then I just started digging deep, and then I took a lot of parenting courses in prison, and I learned that we parent as we were parenting. It's a revolving door. So I could no longer be mad at my mother. I said, you know what? It makes no sense to be mad about my mother. I need her to understand that I'm not mad at her. And I made sure that she understood that. But doing drawing and stuff like that, a common theme kept showing up. Women, whether in a tree, flowers, rivers, and stuff like that. And at that time, I couldn't quite put it together with feminism until I started reading of people who were enslaved, who would sacrifice their kids so they weren't born into slavery or wouldn't come over here. And I said, that's exactly what my mother did in her own way, so I cannot be mad at her. And so I started becoming more intentional. Now, as an artist, I want to portray the woman figure in ways that could be as strong as a tree and sometimes as fragile, right? And sometimes very abused, because we tend to abuse not only the feminine body, but nature. We're constantly consuming, and we're quick to get rid of things that get old, whether there's human beings or material things. And so again, with me, it's all tied up. It's a path, it's my path. Education led me to that. The art allowed me to process that. And the art is allowing me a platform and a voice to now share your guys how I read into these books and how I feel we should keep investing in this thing that I call a community of IQ and EQ, right? Higher education will give you the critical thinking, and the arts will give you the space to learn how to process your trauma. Thank you.
Yeah.